What's up, guys? Lane here. Kind of inaugural video rolling on the new Bastion Black Performance channel that Ken and rolling on. We kind of switched our stuff up. So we want to talk about today why statistics and personal stories will lie to you when we're talking about weapons effectiveness and stopping power of various weapons, weapon systems, and calibers and things like that. Now, do I think that personal stories and statistics are irrelevant? Fuck no, absolutely not. That's where we get all of our data from. What I mean is that in every personal story and every statistic that we read, there's hidden information that we need to make sure that we're pulling out of there before we start making our decisions, especially if we're thinking about buying gear, selling gear, issuing gear, and things like that. Now, what I mean, for example, you can go on Google any time of the day, Google one-shot stop percentage, and you'll get numbers on individual calibers and their usage in defensive scenarios and how many times a weapon had a one-shot stop as a percentage. So the common data is from a guy by the name of Evan Marshall, published this story for the first time back in the 90s. So basically he said, for example, the 45 ACP has a 96% one-shot stop rate for a shot to the torso. That's good, meaning one shot to the torso 96% of the time, whatever the guy was doing, when that hit him, he stopped. That's awesome. That's fucking awesome. We're talking about being in class, that's A's all the time. We'll take that every day and twice on Sunday. Now, what that 96% is not telling you is what about the other 4 dudes. So out of 100 engagements, 96 guys, one shot to the torso, stopped them. That's awesome. That's good shooting. That's good performance. But there's still 4 guys who, when they fired that one round to the torso, didn't stop the guy with that one round. Now, we don't know what happened after that first round, but for those 4 guys, all right, that 96% statistic is irrelevant. So if we go ahead and we've kind of flipped that on its head, if we're talking to somebody and we get a personal story and they happen to be one of those 4 guys, they're going to tell you about how the 45 ACP did not stop the guy in one round. So if that's the only information that we have and we don't seek out other information, that's all we're going to think, is that the round doesn't work. So we need to make sure that we're smarter than that. And this has come in a lot of different forms. I'll share, a couple stories of my own, or one story of my own and an additional story as to why this stuff's relevant. So this story comes from my first deployment to Iraq, which was in 04 and early 05. My unit was the main effort unit in the Battle of Fallujah in November of 2004. So we had the opportunity to get in a lot of close quarter engagements in really tight spaces, urban combat, like really nasty terrain type of things. And this one comes one day, just a random engagement. Took place about 15 to 20 yards distance. There was 2 guys that came busting around the corner. The first guy had an AK. He had that sucker set on rock and roll. He had tracers in the mag. And when he came around the corner, he was blazing. Started hosing me down right from the get-go. He got his first round off before I got my first round off. And so immediately I got that front side tip over on him, started squeezing, started putting rounds on target. And in all honesty, my rounds were not great center of mass shots in the torso. Some went low, some went more out by the shoulders, but I started getting rounds on target right away, and nothing happened whatsoever. So I got my first several rounds off, and nothing happened. And this all happened in a pretty quick time frame, but I was processing. I could see it all take place. And so I got to about my 7th round or so before I actually hit him, and he kind of started to stumble, and his weapon sort of fell to the side, and he actually fired a couple rounds into the ground, and then he fell down. And when he fell down, he still wasn't out of the fight. He tried to grab his rifle again, so I had to re-engage and end that encounter. So that just reinforced my own personal belief that the 5.56 was not a good cartridge, didn't do what it was supposed to do. That guy should have been dead just by the mere sight of me, let alone me having to actually shoot him. In recent years, I've become a lot smarter, a lot more mature, and so I know a lot more about ballistics, and things like that can happen. For every story about a caliber or a particular weapon not stopping a guy when you think that it should, there's another story about how that thing hit him and dropped the guy like a sack of potatoes. We have to be pretty careful about that. And that goes all the way through any kind of weapon. So another really great story I have comes from a book I just read. It's called Swordsmen of the British Empire, and it's by a guy by the name of D.A. Kingsley. And it's literally just 300 or 400 pages of first-hand accounts of blade combat in the British Empire from sometime in the 1600s to about the early 1900s. It's a fucking awesome book. It's just exactly what it sounds like. So this story comes from the storming of the palace of Lucknow, India, which I believe was 1857. There's 3 brothers, all with the last name of Reedy, in whatever Highland regiment it was that was storming, and they were all armed with muskets. They had bayonets fixed, and the bayonets on these particular muskets, they're about 16, 17-inch blade, triangular, steel, very stiff, very thick. I mean, this is a solid piece of gear. This is a frickin' bayonet type of bayonet. And so they all got their bayonets at the ready. They come through the breach, and immediately they're set upon by one of the native Indian troopers. He's got a shield and he's got an Indian tulwar, a very curved sword in his hand. And the tulwar is famous as a limb remover, one of the best, if not the best cutting sword in the history of the world. This guy advances on him, boom, he delivers his first shot right on the top of the head of one of the brothers. Splits this guy from the top of his skull all the way through his entire body to the breastbone. This guy is dead before he hits the ground. As he's delivering that strike, one of the other brothers drives home his bayonet thrust into the left side of the rib cage, up and into the heart. The guy is able to recover from his first stroke, turn, delivers one more stroke of the sword, catches the brother who had just bayoneted him in the collarbone, diagonal strike, removing his head and his right arm, and both the Indian with the sword and the brother who had bayoneted fell dead together. So, by any measure of stopping power, weapons effectiveness, the bayonet was very effective. One shot stopped the guy in less than 2 seconds where he stood, but wasn't fast enough, wasn't immediate enough. So we need to know, when we're talking about just weapon system or effectiveness, where's our cutoff on all that stuff? All right, so we need to be able to take in a lot of information, be able to process a lot of stuff before we start making individual decisions about gear, weapons effectiveness, caliber, all that stuff, and before we say dumb shit on the internet. So remember, guys, only the hits count, and you can never miss fast enough to catch back up.